We so love our Hollywood psychopaths.
Turn on television at night and people watch Dexter about a serial killer, I guess, with a conscience. Does that make any sense?
But in reality, psychopaths are everywhere, from down and out to high and mighty.
The individuals who were psychopaths had very good careers.
Therapy is no sure thing.
My therapy was actually making him more violent.
So how do we cope with them?
If someone seems like they're really coming on strong, promise the world with no hesitation, that's probably someone to be careful of.
Run as far away from this type of person as possible.
I'm Anne Marie McDonald. DocZone turns a wary eye on the psychopath next door. Psychopath. It wouldn't be wrong if you conjured images of predatory killers, axe-wielding maniacs, or the infamous Hannibal Lecter upon hearing the word.
I'll help you catch him, Clary.
The psychopath holds a special place in our society because of our fascination with the dark side of humanity. But most psychopaths don't fit the stereotype.
You're going to run into one of these individuals sometime in your life, more than once, and the encounter could either be exhilarating, thrilling, exciting, or devastating. More likely the latter. Psychopaths are not disordered. They don't suffer from a deficit, but they're simply different.
Dr. Robert Hare is known as the godfather of psychopathy. A forensic psychologist at the University of British Columbia, he developed the psychopathy checklist used by law enforcement agencies and courts all over the world to identify those clusters of traits that only show up in psychopaths. His groundbreaking book, Without Conscience, pinpoints the hallmark of any psychopath: a total disregard of right and wrong.
Most of the psychopaths are living right next to us and living a reasonably normal life, but creating some sort of distress, psychological or environmental or financial, for others around them.
And psychopaths have always been with us, as far back as the written record. Nor do psychopaths discriminate when it comes to race or culture. Inuit lore described them this way.
They refer to them as people whose mind knows what to do, but they don't do it. The ones who stayed behind when all the others went out hunting, and they come back a couple of months later and all the women are pregnant, and say, what's going on here? But they had ways of dealing with these individuals. They didn't try to treat them or talk to them. They would get rid of them.
Thank you very much, Bob. Thank you, Bob.
The study of psychopathic behavior is relatively new. It's been Bob Hare's life work. His diagnostic checklist is based on research with hundreds of criminals in Canadian prisons.
If I want to study something, I go where it's likely to be. So the prevalence of psychopathy in prisons is high, and access to information is readily available.
While psychopaths make up 25% of violent offenders in prison, most psychopaths are not criminals. It's estimated that between 1% and 2% of the general adult male population are psychopaths, which means there could be as many as 600,000 in Canada alone. They could be your neighbor, your boss, your friend, or your spouse. Hare considers them society's most dangerous individuals. His diagnostic checklist measures 20 key personality characteristics which reveal psychopathic traits: egocentric, lacking remorse, guilt, and empathy, deceitful, glib, and shallow. Hare's checklist scores those characteristics on a scale from 0 to 40.
The average score in the population might be 1 or 2. The average score in prisons is about 20, 21, and we use 30 out of 40 as a convenient threshold for defining psychopathy. Now that's very, very high, and that's light years away from the average person. In the general population, what other person who gets a score of 10? I mean, this is well below the threshold for psychopathy, but if you look at the characteristics, these are probably not very nice people.
Psychopaths don't act or look crazy. They're not mentally ill. In fact, they're masters at appearing normal. Their main defect, what psychologists call severe emotional detachment, is harder to diagnose than schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. They don't feel emotion, but act as if they do. They know right from wrong, but lack remorse and empathy. Psychopaths are pathological liars who love to con and manipulate others.
You're kind of surprised because you have the feeling that they think and feel the way we do. And they're going to respond to a situation much the way we do, and they're going to be empathetic and loving and warm and honest, full of integrity. And this often doesn't happen.
In fact, they behave like predators. They are at the top of the food chain, and the rest of us are just lunch. In a psychopath's worldview, they are the cat, and we are all mice.
The cat is a cat, and the cat doesn't know what the mouse is going through, nor does it care. If the mouse has got 3 little nieces at home somewhere, so what? It's a mouse, and I can eat it and I do what I want with it. And the mouse is thinking, I'm a mouse, and what's that thing trying to do to me? And the mouse tries to impart its own values onto the cat. And the cat, of course, has a different set of values based upon its evolution, right? So we have predators and prey.
It's a recurring theme in the world of psychopathy research. They see themselves as the dominant species because our emotions make us weak. And psychopaths tend to be male.
It's quite clear that psychopaths operate at a very basic physiological level. They don't experience the same kinds of emotions that the rest of us do that makes our lives quite rich, whether it's positive or negative emotions, sort of the roller coaster of life. As a psychopath goes through life largely flat, but again engaging in various thrill-seeking behaviors to try to get a bit of a bang, to get away from that sort of flat line.
Dr. Porter says psychopaths may be emotionally dead, but they're not psychotic, out of touch with reality. They know exactly what they're doing, quickly weighing the risks and benefits first. And it's all about reward.
They are ultra-rational thinkers. They don't have the clouding of emotion that the rest of us do, and certainly make conscious decisions, rational decisions about whether to commit an action that, at least at a cognitive level, they understand is wrong. That they know if they stick a knife in that other person's chest, that they will cease to breathe, that they will end up dying. They know that society looks at that behavior and that outcome extremely negatively. This is clearly an immoral act.
It's a good weight there.
We're so attracted by physical appearance that trumps practically everything else about the individual. And we evaluate this person by how he or she looks and dresses and talks. They're going to go into something where they can take advantage of their talents, where there's power, prestige, control, sex, money. That's where they're going to go. They're not stupid. They go to the watering hole rather than somewhere out in the desert where there's no prey. They go where the prey are.
And psychopaths are everywhere. Wolves in sheep's clothing blending in with the rest of us.
Modern business is a perfect environment for them because it enables them to achieve the desires that they want in terms of money, in terms of controlling other people, in terms of gaining power and prestige, of course.
British professor and author Clive Boddy believes psychopathic behavior was largely responsible for the global financial crisis. In England alone, the financial services sector accounts for 1/3 of the GDP, making the fallout even more damaging. Boddy says investment deals were so complex, even the brokers didn't understand them.
You ask yourself what kind of people would sell a product that they don't understand and can't properly price. You'd have to be without conscience, wouldn't you, to sell that kind of thing?
Psychopaths are risk takers, ruthless in their single-minded focus, skills that corporations often value, skills that ensure a quick climb up the corporate ladder.
And he ends up being a very successful businessman. So rather than go out and rob the bank, he becomes a director of the bank. So depending upon the environment you're brought up in, how intelligent you are, how good-looking you are, if you learn to dress and speak properly, and you're attractive, you're devastating. And if you're psychopathic, deadly.
And Clive Boddy saw it all coming. A few years before the financial collapse, he began hearing that some bank executives went so far as to use Bob Hare's psychopath checklist to recruit employees.
Presumably that was because they thought those new employees would be cutthroat and ruthless towards their competitors. The danger, of course, is that they're cutthroat and ruthless towards the bank that employs them as well. It's like saying criminals are good at guarding Fort Knox, guarding the gold, guarding the crown jewels. The outcome would be inevitable. That the gold would go missing, the jewels would be stolen.
Take Bernie Madoff, the former chairman of NASDAQ, who orchestrated a $50 billion Ponzi scheme. Madoff happened to get caught, if only as a result of the financial crisis. But people like him remain in positions of power, respected for their financial acumen.
The first people the governments in the West turned to help them get out of the global financial crisis were the very people who had caused the global financial crisis in the first place. If some of those people were people that have no conscience, as psychopaths are, then the advice that they give will not necessarily be in the best interests of either the companies they work for or the societies in which they live.
But Body's current research on corporate psychopaths suggests senior levels of the British government feel the financial services sector is simply too big to fail. Better to tolerate the corruption than destabilize the banking system.
I would argue that that would be an incorrect conclusion to come to, because if the system has been corrupted by the presence of corporate psychopaths, then the best thing to do is to get those people out of there rather than hope that the problem will go away on its own, because it won't.
Business ethics, corporate responsibility, best practices. Buzzwords companies like to promote as part of their brand. But in the winner-take-all stakes of business, psychopathic values are winning out in the office. And those highly touted ethics quickly take a back seat.
Sorry about the 15th there the other day.
You got lucky. Don't worry, it won't happen again.
That it won't. It's okay, I got it.
In fact, the corporate world seems to be a natural habitat for psychopaths. One study of 203 executives across several companies found a much higher incidence of psychopathy than in the general population. Its author was Dr. Paul Babiak.
And what we find, surprisingly, was that there was a rate of 3.9% in that population of individuals that had scored high enough on the psychopathy checklist that they had hit the mark for being assessed as a psychopath.
Babiak, along with Bob Hare, co-authored Snakes in Suits, When Psychopaths Go to Work, the first major study of psychopaths in the boardroom. Their findings caught the media's attention as people sought to understand how the financial crisis happened.
Those that we found were rated high in psychopathy were rated very high in communication skills, charisma, visioning, but they were also rated extremely low on performance productivity factors. Despite that, despite having that evidence showing that these were not good performers, the individuals who were psychopaths had very good careers, and there was no threat of them losing their jobs. In fact, that they were still on succession plans to move up.
Look, this is one hell of a deal. You know, you're not going to get another deal like this. You're not going to get another chance. This is it.
Babiak describes the psychopath as the smooth, confident, fast-talking rising star in the office. He knows what to say and who to say it to. It's easy for the psychopath to sing the right tune and hit all the right notes.
Psychopaths are what I would call parasitic predators. They find a target, a victim organization. They latch onto it and they suck everything out of it that they can.
Now, I'm swamped with meetings all day.
Everyone has seen this guy. He's the one who takes credit for your idea, is never around when there's a deadline, makes an excuse for not being there, or blames everyone else when there's a failure. It's always about him. They serve only one master, themselves.
They'll take credit for as much as they can, sometimes even claiming that they're giving advice to the vice president or the CEO, which is not true, but they want to get credit for it.
Hey, Curly.
Hey, Marcus.
How you doing?
Babiak has identified the different kinds of psychopaths based on their favorite strategies for succeeding in the workplace.
Well, you know, there's definitely a promotion in it for you. Really? For sure, and I could put in a good word with the boss as well.
The con is an individual who uses their voice to manipulate people and is very verbally fluent, facile with their voice. They're quite manipulative and they're good readers of people, so they tell a good story. They're often entertaining. They mix a lot of falsehood with truth, but you can't tell where one stops and the other begins. And so they get people to do things for them by conning them.